Hi, I'm Nat, and today I want to talk about more parents standing up and protesting against the LGBTQIA2SL+ gender ideology cult that's infecting schools all around Canada and the United States. Earlier today, there was a protest in Ottawa that was started by Billboard Chris and by Josh Alexander. Now, if you don't know who Billboard Chris is, he is a father of two that's been speaking out against the whole gender ideology cult and against giving puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones to young children. He says that there is no right way to be a boy or a girl, and that we shouldn't just base off of stereotypes start medicalizing kids and transitioning them before they reach the age of 18. And he's been very clear about his messaging. And he says that once you're an adult, you can basically do whatever you want. But what you can't do is start telling kids that just because they feel different, or maybe just because something happened to them that made them uncomfortable with their bodies, that means that they are, in fact, the different gender or a different sex, or that they should go through transitioning when they're children. I met Chris back in 2021 when he was having conversations on the sidewalks of downtown Vancouver with anybody who would listen. He would still wear his little sandwich board that says children cannot consent to puberty blockers. And back then we made a video together about a lesson plan from a school where this indoctrination and where teachers were trying to tell students that maybe they were born in the wrong body and that they are the different gender. This was happening all the way back then. Here's a little clip from that. This focus on just like gender and sexuality and identity and all in the guise of creating acceptance is actually creating more confusion in the kids that are listening to these classes and these teachers.
Right. And what it's leading to is disaster.
Our main focus. Yeah.
Medicalization of these kids. Because it's not enough to be gender nonconforming. It's not enough for a girl to be appreciated for being a tomboy. We're teaching them that they're actual boys, and that to do it properly, they need to go on puberty blockers and then cross-sex hormones, because that's what's going to make them happiest. And all of this while they're still young and developing and children. And I think this is why this audio is so important to you and why you wanted to analyze it, because it shows where it starts. And I think a lot of parents might not be aware of, like, this could be in any school, basically, at least in Canada. It is in every school.
Probably in the US too, and the UK and etc. Like, these programs have been coming in and being built up into curriculum. And since then, I kind of had to go back to my normal person job. And Chris went around to the United States and Canada and now the UK and all over the place with his message. And what he does is he still just has conversations on sidewalks with regular people passing by. And if you go to his Twitter handle and you see the videos there, you'll see that most people actually agree with him. The problem is that a lot of them just have no idea that this was happening. But we see now that this is coming to the crux of it, where more and more people are finding out about it. Parents are seeing what their kids are actually being taught in these schools. And now that they realize the extent of it and how deep it goes, they've decided to stand up against it. And as they should. It's their children. In this protest from earlier today, Billboard Chris went back to a street in Ottawa where he went to last year, and he got mobbed by Antifa and attacked because he was mostly by himself. However, this time there was about 1,000 people there showing support, and most of it comprised by parents. And this is a flyer from the event that happened today, where Billboard Chris was joined by Josh Alexander, who is a Canadian student who got kicked out of his school for standing up for his female classmates and saying that males should not be able to go into women's restrooms and the girls' restrooms because it was making these girls uncomfortable, but they felt like they couldn't speak up. Josh Alexander is a religious child, and he goes around and gives Bibles to people, which usually end up burnt by Antifa and the LGBTQIA+, very tolerant counter-protesters. And so they got together and they just told people to show up. And it ended up being, I think, the biggest protest against gender ideology in Canada, which is saying something because we are in Canada. So this is what it kind of looked like. This is directly from Billboard Chris, and he says, "What a great day this was. Biggest protest against gender ideology in Canadian history. There were about 1,000 people, with the numbers fairly evenly split between Canadians who want to protect kids, aka parents mostly, and extremists who want to harm them. Canadians aren't afraid to speak up anymore." And there he is with Josh Alexander and all the people, and we can see the cult members all out around here. And Chris gave his signs to a bunch of people, so now they can go and keep protesting. And we see here that Leave Our Kids Alone is actually trending here in Canada, which is great, because that never happens. And now let's go to this article from the Counter Signal from Kian Bexty. It says, "Muslims and Christians unite at this same protest. Trample radical trans pride flag in the streets of Ottawa. Woke activists and Antifa thugs face off against a united group of Muslim, Christian, and atheist parents who are fed up with gender ideology and indoctrination in Ottawa schools." And here we see a pretty powerful image. I don't like to show children, but you can barely see their faces. They're legitimately trampling on the flags. In an unprecedented display of unity, Christian and Muslim communities joined hands with concerned parents in Ottawa in opposition to the Ottawa-Carleton District School Board's plan to force non-binary pronouns on all students. This is where it gets, this is where you start to understand, if you didn't already, why these parents have a good point and everybody who's against this. So the directive issued to all staff advised the use of they/them pronouns for all students until their preferred pronouns were expressed. The move, viewed as an overreach by many parents, triggered a protest attended by more than 250 individuals. So here we see little kids trampling on the flag, lots of parents, very diverse group. And just to get the rest of the story, the email directive sent out by OCDSB, the school board, aimed at fostering inclusivity and belonging, according to spokesperson Darcy Knoll, met with considerable backlash. Anonymously speaking, one Ottawa mother formerly associated with the OCDSB expressed her shock, remarking that the emails from the board sounded more like LGBTQ propaganda, which it is. It was not a stand against inclusivity, she clarified, but against the erosion of open discussion and the propagation of a radical stance that silences any expression of doubt or differing opinion. And again, this is just regular parents who used to be very on board until they realized where the gender ideologues and the activists that have infiltrated these schools want to take this types of lessons and learning too, and where the end point is, which is no child has a gender until they decide, because children are great at making decisions. And now here's another article from True North that says, "Leave Our Kids Alone. Ottawa's Muslim community joins protest against gender ideology." This is Billboard Chris's protest. Members of Ottawa's Muslim community joined a diverse group of people protesting gender ideology in schools alongside parental rights advocate Chris Elston, Billboard Chris, and student activist Josh Alexander on Friday. The protest's diverse attendance challenged narratives from left-wing trans activists who claimed that those supporting Alexander and Elston would be christo-fascists, Nazis, and white supremacists. According to True North's Rupa Subramania, who is a great journalist who also covered the convoy against the vaccine mandates, one young Muslim woman noted, "Our kids are learning stuff they're not supposed to be learning at this age. I have a brother that is in kindergarten, and learning about this stuff, that's just not appropriate." And again, here we see more diversity, which the progressive left claims to be very diverse and inclusive, but now I'm guessing they're running out of points to make regarding all of this. And if you do want to watch a live stream of someone covering the protest, I would suggest you go watch Viva Fry, who is a Canadian lawyer who also covered the Ottawa convoy protest and does walkarounds of these protests. And he also has a great show with another great lawyer called Robert Barnes. And I would suggest you follow them. They cover all sorts of topics. But he was there. He came up from Florida to cover these things and other protests during the summer here in Canada, because we're going insane every day more and more. And he has a live stream of the full protest almost. He went there, he interviews people from both sides, and he gives a very good perspective of what it actually looked like to be there. I watched it all. I would suggest if you're interested in knowing more about this protest, go watch that live stream. I'll link it again, somewhere. I don't know where the card shows up. But here he is. He finally met Billboard Chris. He's interviewed him online, and he was there. This is Viva Fry. And once again, if you want to watch almost the whole protest, unbiased, essentially coverage, because he's just walking around, I would suggest go watch him. But now, talking about unbiased coverage, let's see how the CBC decided to cover this event, this protest. So 5 arrested at tense face-off between group protesting gender ideology and counter-demonstrators. And they chose to show this, the very one-sided, one side of the gender ideologue cult that was there with all their little ugly flags. Hundreds of protesters on both sides led to temporary closure of Broadview Avenue. And here we see, refuse to be your child's first bully. Instead, inject them with irreversible puberty blockers and hormones because that is now bullying them. And once again, I think I need to remark, puberty blockers are not reversible. And if you want to know more about people that have detransitioned and have decided that that wasn't for them, that maybe they were indoctrinated into doing so by activists and parents and teachers and medical staff, then I would suggest you go watch Chloe Cole's channel. I'll also link it up here and down below. She is a detransitioner who was transitioned at 14 years old, and she does other interviews with other, mostly girls, but people that have been transitioned when they were young and realized that that wasn't what they needed. Sometimes they have autism, especially in girls. Maybe their parents were going through a divorce. They had other sorts of trauma, a lot of sexual abuse that makes you feel uncomfortable with your body. And also nobody explaining to young girls and young boys that going through puberty is difficult. Instead of telling them, maybe you don't like your body because you're the different gender and we need to now medicalize you forever and give you cross-sex hormones and puberty blockers that will lead to you never having sexual feeling and having osteoporosis and all sorts of other challenges. No, instead of telling them that going through puberty is completely normal, nobody likes it, nobody feels comfortable, and if you're a girl that likes boyish things, that doesn't mean you're a boy. No, what the gender ideologues want to do is transition them and medicalize them forever. So here, back to the CBC article. Sorry for that. 5 people were arrested on Broadview Avenue in Ottawa, most of them from Antifa and the gender ideologue side, where hundreds of demonstrators gathered to drown out and counter a man, don't even mention his name, Chris Elston, Billboard Chris, who was protesting what he calls gender ideology. And 2 groups chanted slogans like "Protect trans rights" and "Leave the kids alone" at each other, at times separated by a line of police officers. 3 schools and a medical center sit along or near Broadview Avenue, close to where the demonstration was held. On one side was Chris Elston, a man who travels across the country sharing his concerns about whether transgender children can consent to hormone blockers that delay signs of puberty, and roughly about 200 of his followers. It was a lot more of his followers. If you watch Viva Fry's live stream, you will see how many people were actually there supporting Chris. And once again, it does not delay signs of puberty unless you only prescribe them to a child who is, for example, 9 or 10 years old and starts going through puberty way too early, and then you only give it for about 6 months. One of these drugs' names is Lupron, and that one is also prescribed as a chemical castration drug for sex offenders in the United States. So you kind of see what it does to an adult male or female, and it completely negates sexual function, causes infertility, osteoporosis, lots of other medical issues, and it is not reversible, as a lot of people are led to believe by activists. You cannot uncook a chicken, same as you cannot restart puberty if you're now 17 years old and have been on this drug for long enough, where your regular development of Tanner stage 2, it has been blocked forever, essentially. So he wore a sandwich board stating that children cannot consent to puberty blockers, and wore the same slogan when he visited the school back in 2021, when he got mobbed. On the other side was a somewhat larger group of more than 200 counter-protesters who had come to drown out the hate as a response to Elston's Education Over Indoctrination March, which, I mean, that just makes logical sense. Why would you want to drown out to educate instead of indoctrinating? Their signs brandish slogans like "Protect Trans Youth" and "Refuse to be your child's first bully." bigots not welcome at our schools, but people that want to forever medicalize your child are. Let's see what one of them says. Part of the reason why we're countering in public spaces is to show them that we're vastly outnumber them and their opinions are not only vile, but a minority, said Emily Quill, who helped organize the counter-protest and is a parent of a student. Great. If we let them take a public space, they are free to spread the rhetoric and recruit more people. Also, Elston told CBC News the counter-protesters didn't face him, but he felt parents need to understand what their kids are being taught. And he said, I'm not here to have conversations with them. And you can watch the full interview with the CBC, which Chris put up on his Twitter. I'll also link it down below. This is not fully true. What he was saying is, as people were yelling surrounding him while the CBC was trying to interview him, he said, I cannot try to have conversations with these people because all they do is yell at me. So there's the full quote, CBC and their journalism. You have to be willing to receive a message and have an open dialogue. These people aren't willing to do that, and they were not. And then they have a little bit more fodder to help the LGBTQ community and make them seem like they are in the right. But the LGBTQIA2SL+, whatever, gender ideology cult is not in the right. But for now, thank you for watching. Good luck out there, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.